Have you ever walked into your garden before the day fully begins, when the air is still cool and the first mist is rising off the soil, and felt that quiet connection between your hands, the earth, and everything growing beneath the surface? That is one of the reasons I have stayed in gardening for so many years. We are not just putting plants in the ground. We are working with soil, weather, roots, patience, and hope. And for many of us, one dream keeps coming back, season after season: growing truly massive tomatoes. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, my friends. Almost every tomato grower has imagined it at least once. That huge, heavy fruit hanging from the vine, the kind that makes you stop in your tracks and call someone over to see it. We want tomatoes that look impressive, feel solid in the hand, and make the whole garden feel alive with abundance. But any experienced grower knows the truth. Chasing giant tomatoes can also lead to disappointment. You buy good seed, prepare the bed, feed the soil, train the vines, wait through weeks of heat and rain, and sometimes the result is cracked fruit, odd shapes, weak production, or tomatoes so bland they taste like water. A big tomato is exciting, but size alone is not enough. If the flavor is poor, then the harvest is only a decoration. Over the last decade, I have grown more than 200 tomato varieties in my own soil. Some were excellent, some were frustrating, and some taught me lessons the hard way. I have dealt with disease pressure, heat stress, poor fruit set, splitting, blossom end rot, and plants that looked beautiful but gave almost nothing back. Through all of that trial and error, I have learned which varieties truly deserve space in the garden. Today I want to share 6 gigantic tomato varieties that stand out not only for their size, but also for their production, reliability, and flavor. But this is not just a list of names. Knowing what to grow is only the first step. We also need to understand how to help those plants reach their full potential. We are going to look at the root zone, soil life, plant structure, pollination, water movement, heat protection, and the practical growing choices that turn an ordinary tomato bed into a productive, living system. When you understand how the plant works, you stop guessing and start growing with purpose. And along the way, you may notice that a strong tomato vine teaches many of the same lessons we need in life. Build deep roots, protect your energy, work with your environment, and stay patient long enough for the harvest to ripen. So take a breath, settle in, and let's step into the soil together. 1. Bobcat. Compact boundaries, giant rewards. Our first variety begins with a useful lesson that every gardener should understand. Not every giant has to grow like a jungle. Bobcat is exactly that kind of tomato. At first glance, it does not look like the sort of plant that would produce impressive fruit. It is a determinate tomato, which means it is naturally programmed to stay compact, usually around 30 inches tall, and then produce most of its crop in one strong, concentrated harvest window. That is what makes Bobcat so valuable, especially for gardeners who do not have endless space. Instead of spending all its energy climbing 10 feet into the air, this plant puts its strength where it matters most, into the fruit. It uses its water, nutrients, and structure efficiently, producing thick-walled, uniform tomatoes that are dependable from plant to plant. The fruits usually average around 7.6 to 8.3 ounces, and in my experience, Bobcat is one of the most predictable tomatoes you can grow. You do not see much cracking, cat-facing, or wasted growth. You see steady production, clean fruit, and a plant that knows exactly what it is built to do. There is a practical lesson here, both in the garden and in life. Sometimes we think success means expanding in every direction, taking on more, growing taller, stretching farther. But a plant like Bobcat reminds us that boundaries can create strength. When a tomato knows its limits, it can focus its energy and produce something excellent within that space. If you grow in containers, on a balcony, in a small backyard, or anywhere space is limited, Bobcat is a serious variety to consider. It proves that you do not need a huge garden to grow something impressive. You just need the right plant, the right care, and a clear understanding of how that plant wants to grow. 2. Dwarf Emerald Giant, the beautiful secret of green. Next, we move into one of the most interesting corners of tomato growing, the dwarf tomato project. And one variety that truly stands out is Dwarf Emerald Giant. Most of us are trained to look for red when we think of a ripe tomato. We see red as the signal that the fruit is ready, sweet, and full of flavor. But Dwarf Emerald Giant challenges that habit completely, because this is a green when ripe tomato. When it matures, it does not turn bright red or deep orange. It stays a rich, mossy green, with ripeness showing through more subtle signs. The fruit begins to soften slightly, and you may notice a faint pink blush or gentle striping near the bottom. That is why this tomato teaches you to pay closer attention. You cannot judge it only by color. You have to touch it, observe it, and learn its rhythm. The flavor is what makes it unforgettable. If you enjoy tomatoes with bright acidity, Dwarf Emerald Giant can become one of your favorites. It is bold, meaty, high acid, and has a fresh, lemon-like quality that makes it outstanding in salads. It is not just different for the sake of being different, it is genuinely delicious. And for a dwarf plant, the fruit size is impressive. A single tomato can weigh over 10 ounces, and under good growing conditions, fruits can reach a full pound. What I appreciate most about this variety is that it reminds us not to overlook things just because they do not match our usual expectations. In the garden, some of the best flavors are not always wrapped in the most familiar colors. Dwarf Emerald Giant asks us to slow down and look deeper. It shows that maturity, quality, and beauty do not always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes the best tomato in the basket is the one that still looks green to someone who does not know what they are seeing. 3. Big Beef Plus, shielded against the tempest. As the season moves forward, every tomato garden eventually faces pressure. Heat builds, humidity rises, rain splashes soil onto leaves, and disease can begin moving through the garden before we even realize it. Blight, wilt, root problems, and viral diseases can turn a promising plant into a struggle very quickly. That is where Big Beef Plus earns its place. For many years, the original Big Beef was one of the most trusted tomatoes for home gardeners. It had that classic tomato flavor people wanted, along with strong production and dependable fruit. But Big Beef Plus takes that foundation and strengthens it with improved disease resistance. It keeps the familiar quality of the original, while adding more protection for gardeners who deal with tough growing conditions. The fruits are the kind that make you understand why people keep growing this line. They are smooth, attractive, uniform, and often look almost too perfect to be from a backyard garden. You see fewer blemishes, less cracking, and strong consistency. But the most important strength of Big Beef Plus is not always visible on the fruit. It is built into the plant itself. This variety carries resistance to verticillium wilt, fusarium wilt, races 1, 2, and 3, nematodes, tobacco mosaic virus, and tomato spotted wilt. For a tomato grower, that kind of built-in protection matters. Big Beef Plus teaches a serious gardening lesson. A great tomato is not only judged by how it performs in perfect weather. The real test is how well it stands when disease pressure rises, the soil gets stressed, and the season becomes difficult. The same idea applies to how we manage a garden overall. We cannot only focus on fruit size and harvest photos. We have to build resilience into the system. Healthy soil, proper spacing, airflow, clean watering habits, and resistant varieties all work together. If you want steady harvests over a long season, you need plants that can defend themselves as well as produce. Big Beef Plus is one of those dependable workhorses that gives you both strength and reward. 4. Red Snapper, setting fruit in the sweltering heat. Now let's talk about heat. Because for many growers, this is where tomato dreams start to fall apart. If you garden in the South, in humid coastal regions, in Texas heat, or under the intense sun of California, you know what happens when summer really arrives. Once temperatures climb above 92 degrees Fahrenheit, especially when nights stay warm and humid, many tomato plants begin to shut down. Flowers drop, pollen becomes sticky or unviable, and the plant may look healthy but refuse to set fruit. Red Snapper was bred for exactly that challenge. It is a semi-determinate hybrid developed to keep producing under heat stress, when many other tomatoes slow down or stop. The fruits are large, often weighing from 11 to over 13 ounces, with a broad, slightly flattened shape and very good crack resistance. For growers in hot climates, that combination is extremely valuable. One of the reasons Red Snapper performs so well is the way the plant manages its energy. Instead of becoming thin, exposed, and stressed under the sun, it builds a strong canopy of leaves. That leaf cover matters more than many beginners realize. A dense, healthy canopy shades the fruit, reduces sun scald, and helps keep the soil around the roots cooler and more evenly moist. In heat, leaves are not just decoration, they are protection. There is a good lesson in that. When the garden becomes harsh, the answer is not always to push harder in the same direction. Sometimes the plant survives by protecting what matters most. Red snapper does not fight heat by pretending the heat is not there. It adapts to it. It shields its fruit, manages its moisture, and continues setting tomatoes when other plants are dropping blossoms. If you grow where summers are brutal, this is the kind of variety that can make the difference between an empty vine and a real harvest. 5. Brandy Boy, in the footsteps of giants. For tomato lovers, few names carry as much respect as Brandywine Pink Sudduth. For generations, it has been praised for its rich, complex, sweet, meaty flavor. Many gardeners consider it one of the finest tasting tomatoes ever grown. But anyone who has grown Brandywine also knows the problem. It can be fussy. It often produces lower yields, may form misshapen fruits, can suffer from cat facing, and does not always handle disease pressure well. The flavor may be legendary, but the plant can test your patience. That is where Brandy Boy F1 comes in. This hybrid was created to capture the beloved flavor qualities of Brandywine, while improving the parts that frustrate growers most. It brings stronger productivity, better disease resistance, and improved crack resistance, while still offering that rich, old-fashioned pink tomato experience people love. The fruits are impressive. Brandy Boy commonly produces pink tomatoes averaging over 13 ounces, and in a strong season, many fruits can push past the 1-pound mark. That makes it a powerful choice for gardeners who want the soul of an heirloom but need the reliability of a modern hybrid. It does not erase the past, it builds on it. That is why I see Brandy Boy as a bridge between tradition and practicality. In gardening, we should respect heirlooms because they carry history, flavor, and character. But we also have to grow in the conditions we actually face today: changing weather, heavier disease pressure, smaller spaces, and busy lives. Brandy Boy honors the heritage of brandy wine while giving the grower a stronger plant to work with. It reminds us that tradition and improvement do not have to compete. When they are combined wisely, they can produce something even more useful, more reliable, and still deeply satisfying. 6. Chef's Choice Yellow, the golden masterpiece. Now we arrive at one of the most impressive tomatoes I have ever grown, Chef's Choice Yellow. In my garden, this is the variety that consistently feels like the golden prize at the end of the season. It is large, beautiful, productive, and in taste tests, it has the kind of flavor that makes you stop and remember why you grow tomatoes in the first place. Chef's Choice Yellow was developed as an improved version of Brandywine Yellow, an heirloom known for wonderful flavor, but also known for being difficult, stingy, and frustrating in the garden. Many heirlooms have that problem. They may taste incredible, but they often produce poorly, crack easily, or struggle when the weather turns harsh. Chef's Choice Yellow keeps much of that rich heirloom character, but gives the grower a stronger, more dependable plant. It is productive, handles heat better than many large fruited varieties, and can produce tomatoes that easily pass 1 pound. In a good season, many fruits can reach around 1.5 pounds, but size is only part of the story. The real reason this tomato stands out is flavor. Among all the varieties I have tested, Chef's Choice Yellow has one of the smoothest, sweetest, most enjoyable profiles. It is fruity, low in acid, rich without being heavy, and has that warm golden taste that feels almost like sunshine in tomato form. This is the kind of tomato that proves a giant fruit does not have to be bland. It can be big, productive, beautiful, and still deliver outstanding eating quality. That said, this variety asks for patience and support. Because the fruits are so heavy, you cannot treat the plant casually. It needs a strong cage, a sturdy trellis, or a support system that can hold real weight. It also needs steady care through the difficult parts of summer, especially during dry spells and heat stress. But that is often how the best things in the garden work. The finest harvests are rarely instant. They require preparation, attention, watering, feeding, support, and patience. Chef's Choice Yellow reminds us that some rewards are worth waiting for. When that golden fruit finally ripens and you take the first bite, you understand that every careful step along the way mattered. 7. Rhizosphere Optimization, Burying the past to anchor the future. Now that we have talked about what to grow, we need to talk about how to grow it. Because even the best tomato variety in the world will disappoint you if the root system is weak. A giant harvest does not begin with the fruit, the flowers, or even the leaves. It begins underground, in the rhizosphere, which is the living root zone where soil, moisture, nutrients, microbes, and roots all work together. One of the most important things to understand about tomatoes is that they can form roots along their buried stems. If you look closely at a healthy young tomato seedling, you may notice tiny fuzzy hairs along the stem. Many people ignore them, but they are full of potential. When those stem cells touch moist soil and are protected from light, they can develop into adventitious roots. That means a tomato is not limited to the small root ball it had in the nursery pot. With the right planting method, we can help it build a much larger foundation. That is why I like to plant tomato seedlings deep. I do not simply place them at the same soil line they had in the container. I remove the lower leaves, dig a deep planting hole or a shallow trench, and bury a large portion of the stem, sometimes up to 2/3 of the plant. This may look dramatic at first, but underneath the soil, something powerful begins to happen. The buried stem starts producing new roots, and the plant develops a deeper, broader, stronger root system. This matters because large tomato plants need serious support from below. A shallow root system dries out quickly, suffers more during hot afternoons, and struggles to deliver water, calcium, and nutrients when the fruits begin to size up. A deeper root system can reach more moisture, draw more minerals, and keep the plant steadier during stress. If you want big tomatoes, you cannot only think about what you see above the soil. You must build the hidden structure first. There is also a simple lesson in this process. What once looked weak, like a tall, leggy stem, can become strength when it is handled correctly. We do not throw that stem away. We bury it, protect it, and let it grow new roots. In the garden, and often in life, the parts that seemed fragile can become the very anchor that helps us stand through difficult seasons. Deep roots are not optional when you are trying to carry heavy fruit. 8. Mycorrhizal symbiosis, the web beneath our feet. But even a strong tomato root system does not have to work alone. Beneath healthy soil, there can be an entire network of living partners helping plants reach water and nutrients they could never access by themselves. One of the most important partnerships is mycorrhizal symbiosis, the relationship between plant roots and beneficial fungi. When transplanting tomatoes, many growers add beneficial endomycorrhizal fungi into the root zone, especially species from the glomus group. These microscopic fungi attach to the roots and form exchange structures inside or near the root tissue. From there, they send out extremely fine threads called hyphae. These hyphae spread through tiny spaces in the soil, reaching areas that normal tomato roots cannot enter. The benefit is huge. The fungal network helps gather water, phosphorus, and micronutrients from the soil and brings them back to the plant. In return, the tomato plant shares sugars produced through photosynthesis. It is a trade, and when the soil is managed well, both sides benefit. The plant becomes better supported, the fungi receive energy, and the soil becomes more alive and connected. But there is one warning every gardener should take seriously. If you overload the soil with heavy synthetic fertilizers, especially high phosphorus fertilizers, you can weaken or shut down this partnership. When phosphorus is too easily available in a fast chemical form, the plant has less reason to feed the fungi. The relationship becomes less active. And once those quick nutrients wash away, the plant may be left with weaker biological support and a greater dependence on the next fertilizer application. That is why I prefer to build fertility slowly and steadily with compost, worm castings, organic amendments, and balanced soil care. Slow-release nutrition encourages the roots and soil organisms to keep working together. It does not just feed the plant for a moment, it feeds the living system around the plant. This is one of the great lessons of soil health. A strong garden is not built by forcing everything with quick inputs. It is built by encouraging relationships. Roots, fungi, bacteria, organic matter, moisture, and minerals all need to interact. The healthiest tomato plants are not isolated. They are connected to a living underground web, and when that web is strong, the plant can handle drought, nutrient stress, and heavy fruit production much better. In gardening, as in life, We do not thrive alone. We thrive through healthy connections. 9. The Great Pruning Schism, finding your canopy harmony. Now we come to one of the biggest debates in tomato growing, pruning. Some gardeners believe in strict single-stem pruning. They remove nearly every sucker and train the plant upward with discipline. Others prefer almost no pruning at all, allowing the tomato to grow naturally into a full leafy plant. Both sides have reasons, and both sides can be right depending on the climate, the variety, and the goal. When you prune a tomato aggressively to one main leader, you concentrate the plant's energy into fewer stems and fewer fruits. This can lead to larger individual tomatoes. It also improves airflow, which is very helpful in humid climates where fungal disease spreads easily. By opening the plant, the leaves dry faster after rain or morning dew, and there is less damp, crowded growth near the base. But the unpruned approach also has real value. Leaves are the plant's solar panels. They capture sunlight and turn it into sugars that feed the roots, stems, flowers, and fruit. A larger canopy can support a larger root system and increase total yield over the season. In hot, dry climates, extra foliage also protects the fruit from direct sun and reduces the risk of sun scald. For growers dealing with intense heat, too much pruning can expose fruit and stress the plant. The best answer is often not extreme pruning or total neglect. It is balance. I do not like stripping tomato plants until they look bare, but I also do not let them become a wet, tangled wall of leaves. My basic rule is to keep the bottom 12 inches clean. Once the plant is about 3 to 4 feet tall, I remove the lower leaves and branches that touch or nearly touch the soil. This improves airflow at the base and reduces the chance of soil-borne disease splashing onto the leaves during watering or rain. That simple habit can make a major difference. The lower part of the plant is usually where problems begin: damp leaves, poor airflow, fungal spores, and pests hiding close to the ground. By clearing that zone, you help the plant breathe while still keeping enough canopy to feed and protect the fruit. There is a lesson here beyond tomatoes. Too much pruning in life can leave us rigid, narrow, and fragile. Too little pruning can leave us crowded, stressed, and unable to breathe. The goal is not to remove everything, and it is not to let everything grow wild. The goal is canopy harmony. Keep the useful branches, keep the leaves that feed your growth, but clear away the low, heavy clutter that drags you into the mud. A healthy tomato plant needs sunlight, airflow, structure, and freedom. So do we. 10. The biophysics of sonic pollination, awakening potential. Now let's look closely at the tomato flower. Many beginners wonder why tomato blossoms do not attract butterflies the way other flowers do, or why they do not offer much nectar for honeybees. The reason is that tomato flowers are built differently. They are self-fertile, meaning each flower contains both male and female parts. In theory, one flower can pollinate itself, but the pollen is held inside a tight structure called an anther cone, and it often needs vibration to release properly. This process is called buzz pollination or sonication. In nature, bumblebees are excellent at it. A bumblebee grips the flower and vibrates its flight muscles rapidly, usually in a frequency range around 240 to 320 Hz. That vibration shakes the pollen loose from inside the anther cone, allowing it to fall onto the stigma and fertilize the flower. When conditions are right and pollinators are active, this happens naturally. But not every garden has enough bumblebees. If you are growing in a greenhouse, a high tunnel, a balcony garden, or an urban space with fewer pollinators, fruit set can suffer. Flowers may appear, but if the pollen is not released well, they may dry up and drop. This is especially true when humidity is high, temperatures are stressful, or air movement is limited. That is when we can help the plant. One simple method is to use an electric toothbrush. You do not need to touch the petals roughly or damage the flower. Just place the back or non-bristle side of the vibrating toothbrush against the flower cluster for 1 or 2 seconds in the warm part of the morning. That gentle vibration can help release pollen and improve fruit set, especially in protected growing spaces. This is a small action, but it can have a big effect. A tomato flower already contains what it needs to become fruit, but sometimes it needs the right vibration at the right moment. I find that idea powerful. Many things in the garden are like that. Potential is already there, but it must be awakened by the right conditions. A little warmth, a little movement, a little attention, and suddenly something that would have dropped away becomes a tomato. The same is true in life. Sometimes people already carry the ability, the dream, and the strength inside them, but they need encouragement, connection, or one small moment of support to release it. In the tomato patch, we become the bumblebee when nature is missing. We provide the gentle vibration that helps the flower finish its work. And in our own communities, we can do the same for each other. A kind word, a steady presence, or one timely push can help someone turn hidden potential into real fruit. 11. Debunking the magic crystal, the blossom end rot tragedy. Now we need to talk about one of the most frustrating problems in the tomato garden: blossom end rot. Any grower who has seen it knows the feeling. You walk out to check your big green beefsteaks. Everything looks promising, and then you turn one over and find that dark, sunken, leathery patch on the bottom of the fruit. After all the watering, feeding, staking, and waiting, it feels like the plant has betrayed you. For years, gardeners have been told that there is a simple miracle cure: Epsom salt. You hear it everywhere. Add a handful to the planting hole, mix it into water, spray it on the leaves. Use it whenever fruit starts to rot on the blossom end. The advice is usually given with good intentions, but this is where we need to slow down and understand what is actually happening inside the plant. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. Blossom end rot is linked to a calcium problem in the developing fruit, and Epsom salt contains no calcium at all. Not a little, not a hidden amount, none. Even worse, adding too much magnesium can make the problem harder to correct. Magnesium and calcium compete for uptake in the root zone. So when the soil is flooded with extra magnesium, the plant may have an even harder time taking up the calcium it needs to build strong cell walls in the fruit. That means a treatment many people use to stop blossom end rot can actually increase the risk when it is used without understanding the soil. In most gardens, the real issue is not that the soil has absolutely no calcium. The bigger issue is water movement. Calcium does not move freely through the plant the way some nutrients do. It has to be carried upward with water through the xylem, pulled by transpiration as moisture evaporates from the leaves. If that water flow is interrupted, calcium delivery to the fruit is interrupted too. This is why inconsistent watering causes so much trouble. If the soil swings from bone dry to soaking wet, the calcium stream becomes unstable. The plant cannot move nutrients smoothly to the growing fruit. And if you overfeed with fast, high-nitrogen synthetic fertilizer, the plant may respond with a rush of lush green growth. Those rapidly growing leaves become strong water users, pulling moisture and calcium toward themselves before enough reaches the developing tomatoes at the ends of the branches. The real solution to blossom end rot is not a magic crystal or a quick shortcut. It is steady garden management. Keep soil moisture consistent with deep, regular watering. Use mulch to protect the root zone and slow evaporation. Avoid damaging the roots. Be careful with heavy fertilizer, especially when the plant is already growing strongly. A tomato plant does not need panic care. It needs stability, and there is a lesson in that. In life, we often look for our own version of Epsom salt when deeper structural problems appear. We want a quick fix for stress, instability, exhaustion, or disappointment. But strong fruit does not come from shortcuts. It comes from steady support, healthy roots, consistent care, and balance over time. Structure is built slowly. Character is built slowly. And in the tomato patch, as in life, the healthiest growth depends on the steady movement of water through a well-protected root system. 12. Silent guardians and the art of letting go. As we come near the end of this growing journey, we need to talk about the companions we choose for the tomato bed. One of the most useful and familiar partners is the marigold. Many people plant marigolds because they bring color and beauty to the garden, but their value goes deeper than appearance. Marigolds can act like silent guardians around the root zone. Beneath the soil, where we cannot see the damage beginning, root knot nematodes can become a serious problem. These microscopic roundworms invade tomato roots and cause swollen, distorted galls. Once the roots are damaged, the plant struggles to absorb water and nutrients. The vine may turn yellow, slow down, and fail to support the heavy fruit load we are trying to grow. Certain marigolds produce a natural compound in their roots called alpha-terthianol, which can be harmful to nematodes. This makes marigolds useful as part of a broader soil health and pest management strategy. They are not magic by themselves, but when used wisely, they help protect the growing space and support a healthier environment for heavy-feeding tomato plants. And now we come to one of the most important lessons in tomato growing, the art of letting go. Many gardeners believe a tomato must stay on the vine until it is fully red from top to bottom. That sounds reasonable, but with giant tomatoes, waiting too long can be risky. A large, nearly ripe tomato becomes a target. Birds, squirrels, wasps, hornworms, and other pests only need one bite to ruin a fruit you have cared for all season. Leaving heavy fruit on the vine also keeps the plant loaded down when it could be using that energy for new flowers and the next round of fruit. Once a tomato reaches the breaker stage, when it has begun to show about 30 to 50% color, something important has already happened. The fruit has started the ripening process and has largely separated from its dependence on the vine. At that point, it no longer needs a constant supply of sugars and nutrients from the plant to finish ripening well. It can complete the process on the kitchen counter and still develop excellent flavor, sweetness, and quality. Harvesting at the blush or breaker stage is not cheating the tomato. It is smart growing. You protect the fruit from damage, reduce pressure on the plant, and allow the vine to focus on the next set of blossoms and developing tomatoes. For large fruited varieties, this simple habit can save a surprising amount of your harvest. There is a quiet wisdom in that release. We often want to hold on to the things we have grown until they feel completely finished under our control. A project, a dream, a relationship, even the people we have helped along the way. But everything has a breaker stage. There comes a moment when we have given what we can, and the next part of ripening must happen in its own space. Letting go is not failure, it is trust. And it frees our energy to keep growing, keep planting, and keep preparing for the next season. Conclusion. Today we have walked through the tomato rows together, from giant varieties to deep roots, from soil fungi to pollination, from pruning decisions to the truth behind blossom end rot. And if there is one message running through all of it, it is this. Growing giant tomatoes is not about forcing the plant to obey us. It is about learning how the plant works, then giving it the right conditions to become what it was meant to be. A productive tomato garden is built through relationships. The relationship between roots and soil, between fungi and nutrients, between leaves and sunlight, between water and calcium, between the grower and the plant. When we understand those connections, we stop chasing shortcuts and start building systems that actually support life. So, as you look at your own garden, ask yourself a few simple questions. Where do you need the focused strength of Bobcat, staying compact but producing with purpose? What quiet, unusual beauty are you overlooking because it does not look like the standard version of success? Are you building real resilience into your garden and your life, or only chasing bigger fruit on the outside? And who around you might need one gentle vibration, one encouraging word, to release the potential already waiting inside? Thank you for spending this time with me in the soil at Earthly Delights. If this brought you useful knowledge, a little inspiration, or a new idea for your own tomato patch, consider subscribing, sharing it with another grower, and leaving a comment about the varieties you are growing this season. I would love to hear about your garden, your biggest tomato, and the roots you are building for the harvest ahead. Until next time, take care of your soil, protect your connections, and never be afraid to reach for something colossal. Happy gardening!